The crowd outside the Capitol was buzzing like a swarm of restless bees, cameras flashing in the heavy dusk as rain slicked the marble steps. The air smelled of damp stone and tense anticipation, a storm not just in the sky, but in the hearts of everyone gathered. Inside, under the glittering chandeliers, Jill Biden stood with a smile that looked firm at a distance, but wavered when you got close enough to see her eyes. She had been through public battles before, weathered criticism and gossip, but tonight felt different. There was something raw in the air, something she couldn't quite name, and it pressed down on her chest like a weight. Jill had always been the anchor of her family, the quiet strength in the background. She was born in Hamilton, New Jersey, raised in a working-class family that valued grit more than glamour. From an early age, she loved teaching, loved the idea of shaping lives with words and patience. That calling never left her, even when she married Joe Biden, even when she became a second lady and later first lady. But behind that strong exterior was a woman who carried private fears, of losing herself in the shadows of politics, of being defined not by her own achievements, but by her husband's spotlight. And then there was Kennedy. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a man with a voice that rasped like gravel dragged across pavement, but with words that could slice through silence like lightning. He had grown up in the long shadow of a legendary family name, haunted by both legacy and tragedy. His pursuit of truth, as he saw it, often put him at odds with the establishment, and tonight he seemed more determined than ever to lay bare what he believed had been hidden. For years, Kennedy had studied, spoken, and pushed against walls others dared not touch. Tonight, he was going to push against Jill Biden. The chamber filled quickly with reporters, aides, and politicians. The scent of polished wood and paper mixed with the sweat of nervousness. Jill sat poised, her pale blue suit as crisp as her measured smile. Kennedy rose from his seat with a slow, deliberate motion. The room quieted, not out of respect, but out of curiosity and unease. His eyes met hers for the briefest second, and though his expression betrayed no malice, the intensity in his stare was enough to make Jill's stomach twist. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kennedy began, his voice gravelly yet commanding, "we have been told one story for years, but the truth has a way of demanding to be heard, and tonight I cannot stay silent. The first subplot stirred here, one not of politics, but of truth and betrayal." Kennedy had uncovered documents, testimonies, whispers from behind closed doors. His words painted a picture of manipulation, of choices Jill had made not just as a supportive wife, but as a political strategist, a protector of an image, even if it meant shielding truths the American people deserved to know. Every word felt like a stone cast into still water, ripples spreading wider, reaching deeper. Jill's hand gripped the armrest of her chair. Internally, her mind raced. She had fought so hard to balance the role of educator, mother, and first lady with grace. She knew the sacrifices she had made, the compromises, and yes, she had guarded secrets, made decisions to protect Joe, to protect their family, to protect stability. But Kennedy's voice stripped those intentions bare, leaving only the skeleton of accusation. She felt suddenly exposed, as though the silk suit on her shoulders had been torn away. The second subplot wove in through the eyes of the people watching. Outside the Capitol, citizens huddled under umbrellas, their faces lit by phone screens streaming the event. Among them was Elena, a young schoolteacher who had long admired Jill Biden as a role model. To Elena, Jill represented hope, that someone with a teacher's heart could stand tall in politics. And now, as she listened to Kennedy's revelations, Elena's chest tightened. Was everything she believed about her role model a facade? Or was this the cruel game of politics, where truth was twisted into spectacle? Back inside, Kennedy's words cut deeper. He spoke of programs that never reached their promises, of funds misdirected, of speeches that rang hollow while communities struggled unseen. His tone wasn't vindictive. It was almost sorrowful, as though he lamented what Jill could have been had she not tied herself so tightly to power. The tension built like thunderclouds gathering. Jill's mind wandered briefly to her childhood, to her days in the classroom where she believed in every student, where she thought compassion could change the world. She felt that younger version of herself looking at her now with questioning eyes. Is this what you've become? Finally, Jill stood. Her chair scraped against the polished floor, a sound sharp enough to cut through Kennedy's speech. The room froze. She steadied her breath and spoke, her voice trembling at first, then firming with each word. "You speak of truths, Mr. Kennedy," she said, her eyes locked on his. "But truth without heart is nothing but a weapon. I have lived my life fighting not for perfection, but for people. Yes, I have made choices, hard ones, painful ones. I have shielded my family because I know what it is to lose. I know the pain of grief, of watching people you love taken away by violence, by illness, by the relentless march of time, and if you call that manipulation, then so be it. But do not mistake silence for deceit. Sometimes silence is survival." Her words carried across the chamber like a quiet storm. Kennedy's eyes softened, though his face remained unreadable. For a long moment no one spoke. Even the reporters, pens hovering, seemed unsure whether to write. Elena, standing in the rain outside, felt tears blur her vision. She saw not a perfect woman, not a flawless leader, but a human being struggling to reconcile her public duty with her private heart. And in that moment, Elena realized that maybe true leadership wasn't about being without fault. It was about standing when you are most exposed and refusing to break. The climax came when Kennedy, after a long pause, set down the papers in his hand. "Maybe," he said quietly, "the truth tonight is not what I reveal about you, Dr. Biden, but what you've revealed about yourself." The tension eased like a storm rolling past, leaving broken branches but also clean air. The crowd stirred, whispers rising, but Jill stood straighter than before. She knew the battle wasn't over politics, never offered tidy endings, but something inside her had shifted. Later that night, as Jill walked alone through the dim halls of the White House, her footsteps echoing softly, she allowed herself a moment to breathe. She thought of her students, of Elena, though she didn't know her name, of every person who looked at her not as a flawless figure, but as a reminder that imperfection can still inspire. The lesson lingered like the aftertaste of rain in the air. Exposure doesn't always destroy. Sometimes it strips away the armor so that what's real, what's human, can finally be seen. And that was what Jill carried with her, not the sting of Kennedy's words, but the strength of her own voice, spoken not as a first lady or as a politician's wife, but as Jill, the teacher who still believed in the power of truth told with heart. Do you want me to expand this story even more with richer dialogues and slower pacing to make sure it fully reaches the 25-minute spoken length for YouTube narration?